girlfriend eloped with my jobless brother after I shut down my restaurant. 8 years later, she's shocked when I tell her the truth about that day. I, 40 male, run a restaurant. It's fairly popular in my city. I had actually opened it around 15 years ago, after training with some of the best chefs in my area. I have been passionate about cooking and the culinary arts since I was a young boy, and it had always been my dream to own my place one day, and make it big. I first met my ex-girlfriend Katie, now 40 female, because she was a regular customer at the restaurant. We hit it off instantly, and she kept coming by regularly. I was very shy to approach her initially because I didn't want to scare her off. Also, it was a professional setting for me, and I didn't want to risk my reputation. I started by giving her some extra discount, and that's how we got to talking. It was a slow courtship, and we fell in love gradually. I liked her, and I knew pretty early on that she was the one I would want to spend my life with. She seemed a little unsure, and I didn't want to pressure her in any way or form, so we took things at her pace. Gradually, she came around. She even met my family a couple of times. My family, however, has always been a little dysfunctional. My mother was an alcoholic for half of our lives, but she started doing better when I went to high school. My father was emotionally distant, but he did try his best to raise us, given the circumstances. I also have a younger brother Peter, now 34 male, who got addicted to weed in the school itself, and never went to college or did anything worthwhile. Katie was a practicing psychologist, and she was very concerned about Peter since the first time she met him. I was happy to have a woman in my life who was concerned about my family's well-being. She tried to get him to open up, talk to him about his addiction. According to her, he had a host of mental health issues, and only proper diagnosis and therapy could help him break his cycle of addiction. Earlier, he had tried to quit many times, but he always broke down and failed. It was very disheartening for us. Dad was old and could not be expected to play caretaker to a grown man, and I didn't want Peter around. It was Katie who pushed him, made him come out of his comfort zone, and break his shell. It took a few months, but we could see the improvement in him. He seemed happier, more active, and my parents and I were very grateful to Katie. While I did understand that Katie was just doing her job, and looking out for the better of my family, I always felt a tinge of jealousy. I had begun to feel like she was his therapist first, and my girlfriend later. Peter, on the other hand, had become very codependent. So much so, that if Katie ever said no to hanging out with him, he'd become sullen and anxious. Professional and personal lines had begun to get blurred, and I felt very neglected emotionally. I wanted to talk to her about it so many times, but I never did for fear of being deemed insensitive and selfish. However, it had begun gnawing on my mind tremendously. Then, around 8 years ago, I decided that I wanted to expand my knowledge and experience. I applied to a few culinary programs here and there, and I mailed some chefs around the world, asking them to train me for a few months. I never actually thought that something would come out of it, but I decided to put myself out there anyway. Because I had zero expectations from this little endeavor of mine, I never told anyone about what I was doing. I wanted to tell Katie, but she was too busy, and I had begun to feel a distance between us. We had fallen into a routine, and things were just not as exciting as before. One day, however, I sat her down and asked her where she saw this relationship going. We talked for a long time, some tears were shed, we shared our issues and grievances, and we decided that we would make a conscious effort to work on them because both of us wanted to spend the rest of our lives together. Things improved for a few weeks. We went on dates again, we began communicating more. However, by this time, I had forgotten entirely about the applications that I had sent out. Moreover, the restaurant was facing losses. There was competition in the market, and we were not generating as much revenue as before. This was a difficult time for me professionally, and I'm sure it would have taken a toll on my relationship. I became so busy with the restaurant that I was unable to spend as much time as I'd have wanted to with Katie. It was then that I received a reply from a very famous chef from another country. He was very impressed with my work, and he wanted me to relocate for a year, as he was willing to teach me. I was ecstatic. I also felt that this came at the right time because the restaurant was on the verge of shutting down as it is. I spoke to Dad and I planned that I would close the restaurant for a year, master the cuisine in the meanwhile, and come back and reopen the restaurant with a new menu. The biggest problem was that Katie had no idea about whatever that was happening. I had not kept her in the loop when I was applying, and I was worried about her reaction if she found out that I would be going almost halfway across the world. I decided to broach the topic gently with her. However, she somehow got a whiff of the fact that I was about to shut my restaurant, and would effectively be unemployed. She just confirmed the news from me via text. I told her that while what she heard was true, I also had some news for her. She didn't respond to that message and didn't even come home that night. I called her up but she said she was with a friend and she would be coming the next day. Well, the next day came, but Katie did not. I just had one text on my phone from my brother. I clearly remember what it read. The text is still seared onto my brain. It said, "Sorry bro, but I fell in love." At first, I didn't even know what to make of it. Then I called Katie, but her phone was switched off. I got worried and was about to report to the police when my mother called me and said that Peter and Katie had run away together. I honestly felt like it was some kind of sick joke. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I couldn't believe that my partner for life and my own brother would do something like this to me. I was numb, and I didn't know how to deal with it. This was 8 years ago. Thankfully, I had my year-long gig to look forward to. I worked my ass off and gave the training my everything. I came back and restarted my restaurant, and it has been a success ever since. Yesterday, I ran into Katie at the departmental store. It actually took me some time to recognize her. She looked really different and worn out. She came to me and tried to engage in small talk, but I wasn't very interested in her, quite honestly. She and Peter had been dead to me the moment they had stomped on my heart as if it meant nothing. We got to talking when she congratulated me on the success of my restaurant. That is when I told her that I had shut down shop all those years ago because I had gotten an opportunity to train. Her jaw hit the floor. She mumbled something and said that I was lying since Peter told her I was on the verge of bankruptcy. I told her that none of it was true. While the restaurant was facing losses, it wasn't as bad as Peter had made it out to be. She just started crying there and kept on saying sorry. I gruffly rebuffed her and told her not to make a scene. But now I feel I could have handled it better, and maybe am I the a-hole for the way I treated her. Update, guys, I am not interested in Katie anymore, so even if she does want to get back together, that ship sailed many years ago. I met someone while I was away, and I'm happily married to her. We also have a 4-year-old son who is the light of my life. As far as Peter or Katie are concerned, I have not yet spoken to them, and I don't intend to either. While the reaction was uncharacteristic even for Katie, I have no interest in her life anymore, and I don't want her hovering over mine either. Update 2, Katie came to the restaurant. She ordered a few dishes and then she said that she wanted to talk to me. The basic gist of it all was that Peter had begun manipulating her against me quite early on. He had somehow made her believe that if my restaurant shuts down, I will never lift a finger and work again, and be dependent on her and mooch off of her for the rest of my life. I told her it was funny that it was coming from a jobless man's mouth. Moreover, she didn't have to elope with my brother for that. She said that Peter and she had gotten very attached, and she felt that I would use her for money, and she got confused about her feelings and ran away with him, but she has regretted her decision ever since. She asked if there was any chance we could get back together. I took out my phone and showed her a photo of my family, and asked her to stay away from me for the rest of my life. She didn't take the news well, but I don't care. Update 3, it has been a few months since the confrontation with Katie. She has come over to the restaurant a few times, but I refuse to engage with her. In other news, my wife and I are expecting our second child. I could not be happier. I can't wait to embrace fatherhood again. I'm so glad things happened the way they did, or I would have never had my perfect family. I thank God for it every single day. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year, and honestly, she's just really smart. Like she told me she barely passed high school because she didn't really care, but she took a gap year and got into college as a later in life student and just decided to do engineering. And she did fine and got high honors every year. Like I genuinely don't know how she does it, but she doesn't pay attention or try it a lot, but when she actually does pay attention to something she masters it pretty fast. Like I swear she lives on easy mode. She works like 1 or 2 hours a day at her job, makes a full-time salary, and says she gets everything her bosses ask for done in that little time, so why work more? She's been doing this for like 6 years across different jobs, and for a while I thought she might be getting close to getting fired, but no, she got offered a promotion. And this year we've wanted to get more fit together, and it's a little frustrating because whenever we sign up for a class together, or try something new together, she is like instantly good at it and gets frustrated. I'm not. Like we went roller skating and she just threw herself into it, wiped out like 10 times, then got it down. I was trying to be a little more careful because I'm a bigger guy and couldn't take all those falls, and she started to get annoyed saying I wasn't ever gonna learn if I didn't take some risks this week. We started rock climbing and we're taking a class on belaying, and each time the instructor showed us a new knot, she just did it instantly right along with the coach. And when we were setting up to climb, she kept on being like, no, not like that when I was tying in, and when I got frustrated she'd just reach over and redo my knots. She got mad and told me that if I was holding her 40 feet up I better start paying attention. I felt frustrated and hurt because I was doing my best. I would have just preferred if she let the coach correct me. I got home after climbing and told her that I was getting frustrated, that just because stuff comes easy to her and she gets it instantly doesn't mean she can talk down to me. She got frustrated and said that's fine if we're talking about painting or something. But when she's depending on me for her safety, I can't screw it up, I need to pay attention. I told her most people aren't like her, I feel like she's been able to do anything she actually paid attention to, but for some of us it takes a little more time. She was like, he literally showed you how to tie off 5 times, like if you can't get it by then, maybe you should have told me instead of just screwing around. I feel frustrated because I wasn't trying to screw around, and I feel like she always looks down on me or thinks I'm not trying. Am I the a-hole for how I acted at the climbing class and for my frustrations with my girlfriend? I feel this situation is ridiculous, but there's enough doubt that I need to ask this. My family has always been pretty boozy. The adults in my family have always drunk at parties or celebrations. This may be a bad thing to some, I guess, but they've always made sure that the drinking happens in a separate room where all the underage family isn't allowed. People are cut off if they go too far, and designated drivers are always chosen if the person is not spending the night. The biggest issue, in my opinion, is my sister-in-law Utah, not her name. Utah is a Mormon from, well, Utah. She converted my brother and entered the family over 2 decades ago, and she has always been the biggest pain when it comes to this. Mormons don't drink, they think it's sinful. We've tried to accommodate her, specifically not drinking if she's hosting or the occasions around her family. But, when all 5 of your siblings and their families want to drink, one person is not going to stop it. My family can put up with her, but I very much don't get along with her. I'm a lesbian and Utah is a pearl-clutching Puritan. On Christmas, we got together as a family and per usual all the adults were drinking. Utah did not attend, but my brother and their kids did. As the night went on, their oldest son wandered into my parents' basement, the designated drinking room. He eventually asked me if I would mix him a drink. He is 22 and was home with his parents for the holidays. My dad warned him that it was alcoholic and asked if his dad would be okay with it. He ignored the question and said he knew it was booze and wanted to try it out. His dad didn't know he came down, and by the time he found out, his son was already obviously tipsy. My brother at the time didn't react badly and was only surprised that he came down and wanted to drink with us, but said he was worried about how Utah will react. What I didn't know at the time was that Utah and her son got into a fight earlier that week and that this was partially a way to rebel against his mother. Well, as the night was coming to an end and after my brother got home, Utah called my parents screaming at them for letting her son get drunk. She said they are attacking her family's faith and calling them horrible. I hopped in and defended them, thanking her for not showing her face this Christmas. This is when I learned of the fight and congratulated her on deconverting her son better than I ever could have. She took this as me attacking her and her faith, and we ended up screaming at each other till my dad hung up and told me to drop it altogether. Now, it has hit the fan. My family says to just drop it and move on, but I feel like we have nothing to feel bad about here.